The wheel of time turns,
and ages come and pass.
leaving memories that become legend.
Legend fades to myth,
And even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again.
Where did Captain Hook get his hook?
From the hardware store?
The secondhand store.
Okay.
Okay. Gotta start now. Welcome to the next episode of Another Turning.
Today we'll be discussing our predictions for episode 6 of Amazon's Wheel of Time, titled The Flame of Valon.
So I decided to finally start re-listening to where we're currently at in episode predictions because I'm realizing my memory isn't as good as it used to be. And what's interesting about this episode title, this chapter is like one of the first one or two chapters and appears before the chapter title that title for episode 5 comes from.
Well, I think we had talked about like that we kind of, well, because the chapter title, The Flame of Valon, is about Swan and the Aes Sedai arriving in Faldara, right?
Yes, and Rand starting his panic.
Yeah, I think we're pretty on point with that's going to be in the last episode, because it doesn't make sense to have like Fane's escape before the Aes Sedai even show up.
Yeah, it's also The Flame of Valon is much easier to use as a general title at this point.
Yeah.
And it can fit a lot of stuff where the Blood Calls Blood episode title, it has to have certain things in it. And I think
feels like that, yeah. Yeah, I mean, The Flame of Valon just is a title of the Amerlin Seed. It references any of the Aes Sedai, so any Aes Sedai heavy episode could be titled that.
Yes.
I'm very appropriately dressed today.
Yeah,
with my yellow Aja t-shirt.
I have clothes on. That's about as much as you get.
That's all I ask.
So let's see. We ended with episode 5. We were talking about
Rand in the dungeon.
You said, yes, Rand in the dungeon. Just after kind of ending with Leandrin showing up, or...
You wanted to end a little bit later with like Varen already translating the prophecy and things, whereas I was thinking ending a little bit earlier with it just being Rand in the dungeon, but we're somewhere in that zone.
Yeah. So, and we talked about it, it's kind of like, other than the Amerlin showing up and that little bit of like Rand seeing her, we pretty much don't get any of the Eyes to Die stuff in episode 5.
Yeah, I don't think I would. Yeah. So that would be episode 6, is kind of have maybe start with them entering the dungeon and then flashback, or don't flashback and just rearrange order of events.
That's when we get into the whole artistical decisions on what would be better, and I guess it depends on how they ended. If they ended with just Rand being there, I think it would have to at least show a little bit of that and show Leandrin and Moraine both showing up in the dungeon.
I don't think I'd want the episode to do like what's clearly a flashback. I think it would be slightly better to start with like Moraine and Swan meeting or whatever.
Well, that was the thing. Okay, so rather than doing it as a flashback, just episode 6 is, here are the events that were happening from these people's point of views while Rand was being crazy.
Well, Rand was hiding in the women's quarters.
Well, running around, eventually hiding in the women's quarters. So I think it'd be interesting to jump back, and because when the Amerlin showing up, Lan had just told Rand that Moraine just came back last night.
Yeah.
So we can kind of start, I would say, from her point of view. Maybe she's, just got back, if they want to go back that far, or maybe have a little bit of flashbacks if they can fit them in somewhere to kind of like, what has she been doing for the past month?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends on how much time, because we had talked about, like, do we want there to be that time jump that happens in the books, or do we want it to feel continuous? So I think that's some of it, is how much you want to do that.
There has to be at least something, because we'll get to it in this episode, is she finds out about Tam's history during this time jump.
That's true. I
It's
think
the
that could,
only thing we know.
but I think, yeah, no, because you kind of can't do that. She already knew it. Like that'd be weird. Like, why does she
Yeah,
just tell her? Yeah. Eh,
they could do it somehow. But so pick up with Moraine is in her room. This is what happens in the book, and she's inner monologuing, but of course it's a TV show, so and she has a knock on the door, and it's Leandrin and Anaya Sedai, if I remember correctly, even though
I
I
think
just
so.
listened to it.
I'm impressed.
I just listened to it, so you know. But they're showing up at her door saying, "Hey, the Amelin wants to see you," and they also complain, "Why is your room warded?" Which I think is an important thing to keep in, because I always love her line that it's like, "Oh, servants like to look at stuff. They're interested about Aes Sedai. I didn't have to make the distinction until now." It's always been an
Mm.
interesting line to show, does she trust the Aes Sedai or not? And it's a fun little line. Um, I'm trying to think. There's a lot of uh, so for the first time, other than Elida, we meet two other Aes Sedai, other than Moiraine, and very different personalities. A lot
Yeah. I kind of
of
hope, and this is one thing,
Leandrin.
I hope Leandrin and Elida don't end up having too much of the same personality, because that was kind of one of the things in the first couple books. They kind of seem like the same person. So I hope they do some stuff there to make them feel distinct.
Leandrin, within like her first point of view, shortly after this, tortures a woman practically.
Yeah, which I still think, I talked about this last time. I still think that should just kind of be, actually seeing that scene should be left out, but
Eh, it depends, because when she confronts Rand in the dungeon, there's kind of a connection that what is she doing? Is it similar to what she was doing to Lady Amalisa? Also, though, without the inner monologue, I don't know if it would be possible to show it's similar. So it's hard to
yeah.
say. Um, it's kind of like it comes down to, in the show, do we want to set Leandrin up as a bad guy that early, or do we want to make it less and
Less
make it
obvious.
more ambiguous?
Yeah, do you want to go for the dramatic irony of we know something the characters don't know, or do you want it to be a genuine surprise?
Yeah. Um, and then again, it's hard to say. The other thing is, do we want to know that Lady Amalisa is looking for people,
Yeah, I
looking
don't
for
know.
the three
I feel
boys?
like that's not that big of a plot point, all things considered. Like,
True. So
obviously, it has some character stuff going on, but like, it's not super important.
yeah. So okay, we can cut that. But before that, Moiraine, she's talking to them. So then them running into Lady Amalisa, that's why I brought it up, is they run into Lady Amalisa, and Leandrin's acting friendly towards Lady Amalisa, and of course we won't get Moraine's inner monologue of she's acting weird,
Yeah. I don't
which
know. I mean, you could do something if you wanted to keep like the plot point of Lady Amalisa searching for Rand. You could have that moment where like they're on weirdly good terms there and like hint at it, that there's something going on between Leandrin and Lady Amalisa, and just not have the weird torture compulsion element of it be
yeah,
visible.
I could see that. And I think because we don't get inner monologues, what I would say is, with Moiraine and the two other Aes Sedai, and I'd be interested, they might only have Leandrin come get her, because if they're talking about,
Yeah.
and
I
that
mean, they
would
could
be an
have just a,
acceptable small change.
or
They
it
could
could
have
be
less
there's
Aes
two
Sedai
Aes
show up.
Sedai, or it could be there's two Aes Sedai and they just don't name one of them or whatever.
Yeah. But as they're walking, they can show maybe like Leandrin's character is very indifferent, or almost even like, nose up at everybody they've been passing.
Very
So that when
cold.
all of a sudden Lady Amalita is walking by and she's like, you can see the face change from I don't care about anybody to I'm going to be friendly all of a sudden. Um, to talk to Lady Amalisa, just to show a little bit more of Leandrin's character, early like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then they get to Amelin's room. She gets let in. This is a lot of explanation of things we already know, and this is what I'm interested is
Right.
how much to keep in this point.
You don't really need to. So the stuff that like one show don't tell, but also like a lot of this stuff, Robert Jordan in his books repeats a lot of information because if you're reading a book and you're waiting 2 years to read the next one, it's good to refresh people. But in TV shows, it's been a week at most since you've watched the last episode. You don't
Yeah.
need to have, oh, by the way, this is what happened.
Yeah. I think this meeting still is important because it establishes the relationship between Moiraine and Suan.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fun little thing to have.
So
So I think it will be
here's.
a lot shorter.
Mhm.
Maybe even like a fade out as she starts to like explain stuff we already know, and they could just fade out to the next scene.
Yeah.
Oh, well, no,
So, well, here's what I'm thinking, right? One of the things I think this episode is going to incorporate is flashbacks to Swan and Moraine as novices or accepted or like New Spring
true.
stuff. That would be a perfect time to do it. Is, you know, the Amerlin seat dismisses the other Aes Sedai, and then they like hug or whatever. And then you have Moraine starts to go into their explanation, and then it flashes back, and we get the story of how they started this hunt. So, like, something there. I don't know what exactly they'll do with this, just because you can't do half of New Spring here in a flashback, but like something here to establish one that their childhood best, not childhood, but college buddies, you know, and the fact that like they started this hunt together and what it means for them. And I think that would be a good point to do this flashback,
I mean, yeah, but
depending on how long of a time, because that's what I'm worried about a little bit. Putting it there is the pacing, but depending on time stuff, I think this would be a good moment to have that flashback to establish Moraine and Swan's relationship instead of us hearing the exposition of Moraine explaining everything to Swan that we already know.
Honestly, where we're at book, there's a lot of like slow exposition stuff next several chapters. I would almost say the flashbacks might fit better in with Rand's meeting with the Amerlin, but at the same time, that meeting has a lot more new information, so it's more important to get that
Right.
exposition.
So what I'm thinking is having those flashbacks set periodically. So this first one would just be like a little bit about Swan and Moraine's relationship, and maybe them seeing the foretelling. And then later on in that meeting, get some flashbacks about them starting the hunt and the whole that section.
Okay.
That
So
would I would split it up. I wouldn't do like a big flashback. I would chop it up.
In this one, it would be a quick like she walks in. It's a quick like, hey, you're here. I know you're mad at me. Like the report that she gets from Swan about how all the Aja's, and we get a little bit of Aja politics and White Tower politics here, which is fine. And then she says, all right, Liana, you can leave us. Finding out about warding the room is interesting because that's a new thing to us.
And at this point, I think they should start showing weaves because this is distinctly Moraine's point of view. So I would be okay if we see the weaving for this.
True. I mean, I could go either way on it. Because it's warding a room, it's kind of like a weird one to see, I think. So that's the only reason why I wouldn't necessarily say to show it.
Nah. I could go either way. I'm just saying
Then,
at this point, I think would be where we start to maybe start seeing weaves happen, you know?
yes, it'd be very acceptable. Then it's, oh, Moraine, it's so nice to have a friend, or whatever she says.
Yeah.
And
So, important question. Just the most important question. What should be the nature of Swan and Moraine's relationship here?
What do you mean?
Are
in
they
this room or in flashback?
both?
Only because there is too much, unless they were doing a full like New Spring adaptation or something. I don't think it's worth trying to put them as a more than just really good friends.
Okay.
Unless they are just trying, it would feel too much like hey, we're just trying to stamp we have a homosexual couple in the series if they made it
Maybe.
obvious either in this or the flashback.
I
Because this is
feel
the
like
only time they interact.
Yeah, that's true. They don't really have a lot of interaction here. I think it could be done well with some clever writing to get the idea that these are former lovers that have been separated by it for a long time. So, like, have them hug, and then in the flashback, you make it clear that they're more than just, you know.
They could. It's just, I don't feel like it adds anything, and it might actually take away, just in the fact that I get it. And I mean, if they want to, just, they can. I could go either way with it, but what do you show in a flashback? Like,
Well, that's what I'm saying. It depends on what the flashback is. So, if the flashback is them in the ambulance seat studying when Guitar,
I think
whatever,
that would be the
has,
random
if
meeting.
that's all the flashback is, then obviously you can't establish it there. But if you're trying to establish Moraine and Swan's relationship, like that, they're really close, whatever the nature of that closeness is.
Yeah.
You could have them, you know, sneaking around the tower, kissing in corners, playing pranks on Aes Sedai. Like, you could do a little bit of that if you want to establish their relationship. I think
You
that's
could.
what I'm saying. If you want to establish their relationship, I would want it to be explicitly a relationship, not just a friendship. If they're not going to focus on that at all, then don't focus on that. I guess that's what I'm saying.
I guess. I mean, like I said, I can go either way. I know people's opinions and things, and it's never confirmed, and that's the only reason why I feel like it is too much of it doesn't serve anything for the plot.
Yeah, but not everything has to be plot relevant.
I get that, but it would seem too much like we just wanted a lesbian relationship confirmed in the story at this point. Yes, some people will be okay with it. Then you'll have too many people who are ignorant or for other reasons.
Yeah, no, I get you.
I would be.
You err on the side of caution. The don't tick anybody off side. Whereas I'm the, nah, do it. Just go for it. If they're mad, they're mad.
If it has a reason, if it does anything good, like, I mean, for me personally, this one I'd be fine. But, like, for instance, there's other characters. This one I can accept because there's enough in the book that I can be like, I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
If they did it with other characters, just be like, oh, we won't. Well, that's why I said it's okay for this one, and I can accept it. And it might not, this one's not too bad. Other characters, if they, like, all of a sudden decide to make somebody else gay who obviously wasn't, that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, all right, really?
Nobody ever explicitly says I am only into X sexuality.
Okay.
Anyway.
Write an original story at that. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, I'll stop baiting you into arguments.
I can accept this one. If they don't put it in, though, I can also accept it very easily. And so, other than that,
okay, so flashback. Then we come back, and it's the Trollocs attacking.
We're saying we skip the Leandra and Lady Amelisa scene.
Yeah.
So we can kind of get to see what other people were doing when the Trollocs attack.
Want to. So we had covered last time, Rand would probably see Matt. Well, he wouldn't see Matt. He would see Perrin at some point. We had said Matt and Egwene, we would see them going down to the dungeons, right?
Yes.
And he was with Nynaeve when the attack happened. So for covering Moraine here, the only people we don't know what they were up to would be Tom and Lan and Loyal. I guess you could see Loyal with Perrin.
Tom's not around.
Oh. Yeah, Tom's dead, sorry.
Well, I just meant, like,
I can't believe I just forgot Tom wasn't there.
Like, why? Because in the book, there's Leandrin shows up. Why are you here, boy? And then Moiraine shows up. What are you doing here, Leandrin? What are you doing here, Moiraine? What brought Moiraine down there? That's what I mean of maybe a little bit of, like, when she leaves the meeting, do we just jump back to the dungeon all of a sudden?
Well, I was thinking No, that's what I meant. Like, is they're in the meeting and the Trollocs attack, and we get to see Moraine and Swan respond to the attack.
Interesting.
And then maybe skip to the dungeon so you see a little bit of that. Just because, personally, I would love to see a scene of Moraine and Swan fighting back to back or something. That's totally personal. I want to see this, but
I get that. Again, this comes to, are they going to keep certain things? Is because when Moraine goes to Swan's room, there's like 4 or 5 Aes Sedai just sitting in the antechamber as she walks up. Do they keep that in? Do they cut that out? If they keep it in, you can't have a Moiraine Swan duo because there's 4 or 5 other Aes Sedai. It wouldn't make sense.
yeah. You could also, if you wanted to, and this is if you wanted to, establish the idea of linking here. Not that it's super important or anything, but if they just wanted to give a hint at it or something, so later it's, but I just think I want to see more Aes Sedai fighting.
Oh, I know. So I could see them doing that. Could be, but I would say after she leaves the meeting and she's starting to walk back to her room.
Okay, so they're split up. Yeah, somewhere in there, I think. Yeah, just
because Lan is separate from Moiraine in the books at this point because they
right.
don't show up together. So I think it would be good is.
Do we want to establish what Lan's doing, or just kind of like forget him?
No.
I don't really. Lan is in such a weird space at the beginning of the Great Hunt that I don't know what to do with him. Like, it's weird.
Mm-hmm. So Moiraine, we have flashback. We can come back into the meeting and we can kind of get the line that Swan. All right, I'll call up for some tea and biscuits so we can start planning. And Moraine's like, no, we've already been closeted together too long. It'll look suspicious.
Yeah.
Because I like if they show little hints of White Tower politics and Moraine and Swan are, they're friends, but they're not allowed to be friends because of station sort of thing.
Right.
And then we can get Moraine leaving, and then the bells can go off, and we can see her like come to a decision, and she starts running towards the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Also, and burning Trollocs along the way.
Was she going to the dungeons? I assume she was going to the dungeons to check on Fane, because she knew he was there and knew he was dangerous.
She doesn't go to the dungeons, though. Well, because once the alarm bells went off, she thought, hey, Fane might be trying to escape.
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is like when she hears the bells go off, she
Right. She doesn't go directly to the dungeons. Yeah, it's after the attack starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying is, and we can see her kind of maybe just for interesting continuity, if she can be running by and she can see Ingtar squaring up with the Murdral, and she kind of like uses something towards the Murdral and it makes the Murdral run off or something like that. Just for it. Interesting. To see, like, here we are in the timeline.
Yeah, if you see the scenes that Rand saw, but slightly later, because they're both coming from the women's quarters. So, if you do that, just
true.
So you could do the exact. I mean, she would be following presumably the same path that Rand followed, so she could see the same scenes Rand saw, but like moments later. And it gives you that idea of she's not that far behind him. Would be kind of interesting. But then I guess the question is, how does Liandrin get there before her?
She was already there.
Was she?
She's the one who let him out.
Was she?
We never get confirmation of who let him out.
Okay. Okay, whatever.
I mean,
but that'd be interesting then. Actually, that's kind of nice because Moraine was only like a minute behind Rand, so how did this person? And then you start putting pieces together. I like hinting at Liandrin's alliance rather than hitting you over the head with a hammer the way that the book does.
Yes.
So, I like that. So, then you're like, where did she come from? Interesting. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Especially if you show like Moraine when she gets there is like panting because she's been using the one power, maybe sweating, and Liandrin looks like fine.
Well, not sweating.
Sorry, not sweating.
Yeah. Which, if I remember right, in the book, it did say that Moiraine seemed to be breathing heavy, like she ran there.
If she was
So,
running and channeling the whole time, she would be a
exactly.
little weird.
So, for the episode, we can have following Moiraine. She comes into the dungeon, and you already see Leandrin there.
Confronting Rand.
Like, show that Rand, and since from Moraine's point of view, this is another thing. If you want to show the weaves of what's holding Rand there,
Oh, that would be
like
interesting.
the air holding him up.
To rewind, we would have ended episode 5 with Leandrin confronting Rand. And then we come in Moiraine. Yeah. That would be really neat. Okay, I like that. Hopefully that... It's hard for me to picture how long this would take, because you don't want that to be that long. But if it's like a 10-minute between like her conversation with Swan, the flashback, and the sequence, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
So 10,
yeah,
15.
I don't think it'd be too bad.
Yeah.
And also why showing Moiraine fighting too is because it's a lot of exposition-y type stuff, slower stuff. This little bit of action will be nice to have here, I think. So yeah, Moiraine shows up. They yell at each other. Rand runs in. Egwene and Mat are hurt.
Yeah.
Moiraine
I'm trying to remember exactly what happens in this, because I know there's the fact that the dagger is gone. Panic.
Yeah.
They get the prophecy at some point. Does Rand hear the translation, or is that
no
later?
Not.
Varen, Moiraine, and Swan talking about it.
It's Varen, Moiraine, and Swan.
Okay.
That's why I said this is a lot of exposition-y stuff. It's just, Rand runs in, he screams for Moiraine, she comes in, says, oh my god, the dagger's gone, or she notices the dagger's gone. Does a quick healing on Egwene, and tells the soldiers that come in afterwards that, hey, take her to a room and take him to the Amaryllis room.
Yeah.
So we get that. Then as they're walking out, Rand's following after them, and Lan shows up telling him, hey, you can leave if you want. But I've been trying to leave. The gates were barred. Well, you can leave now. And this is we get, and I think what's interesting for this part of it and why it's important to keep this part in is seeing Varen. And again, do they have still 2 from each Aja that show up with the Amerlin? If they
I think
do,
you
it's
could.
Varen
like, you don't need to focus on all of them, but I
them,
think it's okay to have them, that you see them, and, you know.
Yeah. But we have Varen and the other brown Aes Sedai kind of like walking around like the room's not a mess, studying the writing on the wall. I think it helps establish the kind of weirdness of the brown Aja, the eccentricity
The
of
clinical
them.
focus nature.
Yeah, and which is fun. I'm trying to think from this point.
Well, so the stuff that happens at this point, and I think it happens at the same time, is like Lan coaching Rand, and then the meeting between the Aes Sedai with Moiraine, Swan, and Varen.
There's now maybe because he goes back to his room, sleeps the rest of the night, presumably, and then it's the next day where he gets told he has a meeting with the Amerlin.
Oh, okay.
So, well, like, there's not that much time that passes. So, yeah, the meeting between... No, it's that same night, because it's right after they heal Mat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
they,
it's
like,
not
heal
the
Mat,
time
then there's the meeting. Yeah, and I thought Rand met with the Amerlin immediately after she had that conversation with Varen and Moiraine. I don't want my book. It's up there somewhere.
I really literally just listened to this. They heal Mat. Varen confronts them. Then I think they're also... At some point, there's the White Cloak stuff, but man, we already covered that.
Yeah, we did that at episode 5.
Then Rand, I think Rand talks, there's the parent going to see Matt
Oh, I forgot about
in the
that.
infirmary and stuff.
Does
So
anything important
presumably,
happen there? Because not Leandrin, Liana is like watching over Max. That's the time Perrin like picks her up and moves her out of the way, which is just super not okay.
it's weird.
You can't just
And
pick somebody up.
you also can't like do what Liana's doing, although it's only verbal, whatever.
Yeah, it's a little weird. That whole thing is weird. Does anything important happen in that interaction?
Well, not with Perrin going to see Matt, but when he comes back and Rand's like, "How is Matt doing?" It establishes that one, Rand's an idiot, so Perrin's still mad at him because Perrin mentions that the women were looking for me because I was out in the gardens and one of the servants saw me and ran off saying, "Oh, we gotta go tell Leandrin," said I. So establishes that people were looking for all the boys, and Rand stuck in his own head thinking, no, they were only looking for me.
Yeah.
There's that scene that happens in the room, which they
Yeah.
could, because we already kind of said, well, because then if we're not going to have Leanne talk to Lady Amelisa, or we're not going to see it, is that still happening in the background?
I kind of
Is
think
it
it would be
important?
good to establish that that's happening because I think establishing
But
that's, but I don't know, all of the Aes Sedai have interests in all of them, so I think, like, is anybody going to pick up on the fact that this one Aes Sedai has more interest in them?
yeah, if they, other than showing Leandrin's weird compulsion-y thing, there's no other reason. Like, there's nothing important comes from, like I said, other than this small argument that happens because Rand thinks they were just looking for him, and Perrin confirms no, they were looking for all of us, and Rand can't get over himself. That's the only thing that comes from them looking for Lady Amelisa looking for him.
Right. Which I think is kind of
So
an
they don't,
important thing to establish that all three of these boys are important and Rand needs to get over himself. But I think I would shift that and have it happen in the infirmary so that Rand and Perrin are both near Matt maybe and just kind of consolidate a little more rather than it being like,
or they could just do it from in the room with Perrin just showing back up in the room.
or that.
And well, when Rand asks how's Egwene and Matt, and Perrin answers, we can already tell where he just came from. So
That makes sense. Either one. I think the
because
only thing I would
if
say
Rand,
with Rand visiting them is it maybe makes him look a little bit better. Maybe.
yeah, but if he visited with Perrin, it would fuse what they started the argument about. It wouldn't
That's
work
true.
as well, I don't think, as an argument starter. So yeah, I guess we do that scene, and then it's after Perrin, I think, storms out of the room because Rand still has his head up, you know, that Lan walks in and is like, "Well, Chief Herder, the Armorland wants to see you."
Yeah, because I don't think we see Matt's healing at all in the books. They could actually
They
include it if they wanted to.
they just well, I mean, we skipped over it of saying how for time frame is it would be Moiraine tells him to whisk it off. Rand gets told he could have left. He can leave now by land, and then it jumps to in the books. It just jumps to them like washing their. It's like doctors cleaning up after surgery kind of scene
Yeah.
after Matt's healing, but
Yeah.
you know,
And I think it'd
magic.
be interesting to see some of it, but if they didn't want to, I could see it going either way there.
Um, unless they wanted to show, like you said, maybe they can start to introduce the circle, more channeling in here and stuff like that. I think it's still fine to kind of be like, hey, we're just finished because they just healed him and they can show people taking Matt out of the room to the infirmary or wherever it is. And this is a conversation that is important.
Mm-hmm.
because this is the whole Varen's like, oh, nasty business, talking about all how quickly can the dagger corrupt people and all that stuff, which I don't know if they need to keep all that flighty sounding stuff in there, because her being super flighty.
I don't know. I hope they do a really good job establishing Varen's character. I know she's going to be kind of a tricky one to nail.
So then it might be important to, in this conversation, have her clinically talking about the dagger.
I just also think it's kind of nice. Maybe
And
like
then,
in a very, not repeating stuff we already know, because that could be annoying, but it could be kind of nice to get a little more like world building detail here, depending on how much they talked about it and explained it earlier, you know?
true. Then this is when Varen, she gets dismissed or whatever, and she's like, just keeps talking, and she's like, oh, I thought you would want to hear, and she pulls out her little book, and this is when we get the dark prophecy that was written on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get that, and she's going through that, and they're kind of talking about what the different pieces mean, and then right at the end she's like, oh, and the one who channels must be one of the three boys that came with you, Moraine. Drops that bomb right there.
Bless her heart.
And this will probably be one of the scenes that doesn't have a point of view character, so to speak, I would say.
Right. Well, I think, you know, with shows, it's kind of questionable what you get for point of view and what have you.
Well, yeah, because unless you're following a character walking through a hallway, but since it's all Aes Sedai, I think it'd be interesting to see, like, oh, hey, all of a sudden you see a glow around Swan and Moraine.
Every
and
single
start
one
to
of
get,
them. Whoosh.
well, not Varen. Varen just
Well, that's
keeps
true.
going.
Varen's chill.
We get, yep, the confirmation that she's known, and this is another spot where if they wanted to have a little bit of a flashback, because Varen says, oh, I've been thinking about this for 20 years. I remember the two of you who used to get honey cakes together, or whatever it was. So if they wanted to add a little bit more of a flashback to New Spring here.
Yeah, they could add a little bit. I don't know. We're not experts on film in any way, so like things like this that's like seems like a good idea, it actually might end up looking clunky and weird, but they could add another little flashback here.
Yeah, it's up to them. Then after this, we can jump to the whole Perrin Rand argument. Lan shows up to be like, the Amerlin wants to see you. Which this is another really cool scene. Even though this episode so far is a lot of more exposition-y stuff, there are such awesome scenes.
This is such a good moment, like Lan just being like, all right, here's what you do, as they're like walking.
Yeah. They walk, he shows up, and we get Tam's backstory in this meeting.
Mm-hmm. And this is another one, like, do we do something visual here, or is it just Moraine monologuing?
Well, we get two big things that can be done. She confirms about how this is when she talks about the prophecy that they overheard about Rand being born.
Right.
And we also hear Tam's backstory.
Right.
So
I think they could do it. You could almost do like flashbacks to kind of like a weird like montage type thing. I have this visual in my mind and I'm not going to be able to describe it, of like Moraine monologuing about hearing the prophecy and what happened with who Tam is, his backstory, him finding Rand, right? Over like a montage of like Swan and Moraine taking names in a notebook, switching between that, like Moraine and Swan doing drudgery, and Tam finding the baby, taking it home, that kind of thing.
Either that or the other thing I was thinking is because in the book, Rand, there's a bunch of switching back and forth between what he's hearing Moraine say about the prophecy and her story. and what Rand heard from his father in the fever dream.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing they could do is be like, show the scene of them in the meeting and Moraine's talking about, and then like flashing to back to Rand actually carrying him through the Tam through the woods and hearing the fever dream stuff,
You could do that.
just to spice it up a little bit.
I don't remember when we had our episode 1 predictions because that was forever ago. Did we say like there should be like flashback moments in that?
I don't remember, and
I don't think
feel
we
like
did, but like, because I know it's. I mean, obviously that's supposed to be Rand's point of view, and obviously like, but
I think we debated it because we knew this was coming up, so I think we debated on whether or not to have flashbacks there, here.
Yeah.
And it's the interesting thing about doing it as a show, and obviously me and you are on the side of don't cut anything, if anything add stuff. And this is
I have stuff I want to cut later, but not this early.
Well, yeah, but this is one of those situations where it's like, oh, add stuff. And it would be nice to get that, but not necessary.
I think you need something visual. That's
why I said,
whether it's a flashback to Rand dragging Tam, it's a flashback to Tam in the snow, or it's just there's something visually happening in the room. Like it's Moraine talking and Swan watching Rand's reaction and Rand, slowly collapsing into a chair or something. Like you could do something very visually just in the room, acting wise, to like make it interesting.
They need to do something because, like, again, a lot of exposition. They need to try to break it up. I think it'd be fine to do flashes of when. I don't think doing Tam's backstory as a flashback would work here because it's just
not straight. I wouldn't just
too
do
much
that.
It's too much of a thing unless they would have to dedicate a lot more to that. I think we're doing as Moraine's talking, because as she's talking, it can kind of flow back and we can just hear her still talking about what she's talking about as we see them attending the Amerlin and the Keeper giving her prophecy as Moraine telling you that she just gave this prophecy, she dies. Then it can skip forward a little bit and show them taking names and stuff. They could do a little bit of those scenes as she's talking over it. If
I know what I was thinking. But I was thinking have that, like it's them out on this battlefield taking names, line of women, whatever, and there's Dragon Mount in the background. And then you see some sort of pan or whatever, and then it focuses in on this man on the battlefield, wrapping a baby. And then it pans back around, and it's Swan and Moraine in the libraries copying more names or whatever.
They could definitely do a lot here. I think of all of the meetings we have, this is the only one where we would get almost the same information exactly as it is in the books, but we would not spend as much time actually seeing the meeting. We would spend more time seeing like flashbacks and stuff.
Again, unless they do something really creative with like the acting and the blocking and camera, you can make that interesting. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just
I know. It's just there's a lot of meetings and there's a lot of expositions. Any way they can get away from it, even though they could make the exposition interesting within that meeting room, it's still. I don't think we need to see the meeting room until we need to see it when they straight up say, "I know you can channel. You're the Dragon Reborn." That's important. But for the backstory stuff, I think doing the flashbacks works. Then I'm trying to think what happens from here.
I think after that, it's just them setting out. No, there might be something with Nynaeve and Egwene first.
Okay.
I don't know.
Because he said they're leaving in a couple of hours, is what Rand's told. We flash to the scene where Lan gives Nynaeve his signet ring.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that seems
Which
weird.
that could
Seems
get
out
put
of
in
place
somewhere
in this
else,
scene.
possibly.
Yeah, I don't.
The only reason it goes here is because Lan gets told, "Hey, you don't need to be here with Rand. You have stuff Moraine wants you to do. You need to pack for our travels." Pretty much is what she's saying to him.
Yeah, I think you could do it. I don't know. I almost would do it before Rand stuff. Like, Lan drops Rand off and then leaves, and we follow follow
Lan,
Lan initially, and then see the Lan Nynaeve stuff before, because it feels weird after. Like the
yeah,
emotional stuff, it feels weird to me.
true. In the book, it's just breaking up time, I think, between like, here is what's happening, and then here's Rand down in the gathering area getting ready to leave.
Right.
I think there might be another, like, this is what somebody else is doing, possibly at this point. I think
Yeah, I don't.
maybe around this time, this is we get more of the white cloaks. No, I don't know.
There needs to
There's a
be.
lot
I
of
I think you can't go straight from Rand's meeting, or he's just had his like life blown open, to Nynaeve and Lan bittersweet.
yeah.
Like, that's just jarring. So you either need something in between there, or I would swap them.
I would just swap them. I think following Lan after he drops off Rand to get
And then
that
he
meeting
bumps
really
into
quick.
Nynaeve, like, oh,
Yeah,
whoops, who has clearly
instead
been
of because I
avoiding
think it
him.
is in the books. I think it's Nynaeve bumps into Lan
Right, it doesn't
sort of
really matter.
thing. Doesn't matter. But yeah, I think they can do that scene before the meeting with the armor
Yeah,
men.
I think I would switch them. I think, and then you have that heartbreaking.
What beautiful.
Which speech is this? Because we already heard. Because the one in the Blight is the "I'll hate the man you choose because he is not me."
Yeah, this is the Nynaeve's been thinking in her inner monologue about, well, he's a king, and so when she walks up, he's like, "I need to talk to you," and she's like, "We've said everything we need to say.
Yeah, she's like, I
What could
shamed
you?"
myself, and oh, it's the
Yep.
"I will never shame you," blah blah blah, Mashiera, blah blah blah. Yeah,
And he gives him the signet. He gives her the signet ring that is big enough for both her thumbs to fit in.
that's. I mean, like, I guess I have relatively small fingers, but like, nobody has Nobody has like a middle finger that thick.
You're also like Nynaeve. The typical woman in Robert Jordan's world is, a lot of them are the super dainty, like their
I
hands probably are like a child's hand size almost.
I think Nynaeve and I are the same height, though. I think Nynaeve's 5'3", 5'4". I don't know. I think Robert Jordan just likes to exaggerate his proportions. Women are all super tiny and dainty. Guys are all giants. It's fine.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what it is.
But anyway.
So, um, yep, we get that
And then
scene, the
all the
meeting.
Rand
So,
stuff. And then what happens afterwards? Do we just switch to them packing up and shipping out? Or.
yeah,
Because this
there's
is
no
where I
other
imagined
important.
this episode ending. Like, I didn't imagine them. I mean, I guess the boys get sent off, and then we follow Egwene and Nynaeve on the ship for a while, I think is where I would go. I just don't know exactly where this episode would end. And we're definitely not at an hour of time yet.
No, because after this, I say we would definitely get down to them getting ready to leave. Rand is.
Oh, there's a goodbye scene between Rand and Egwene, I think. Maybe.
Oh, that's right. There's Egwene and Nynaeve are. Oh, after Nynaeve is with Lan, she goes back to the room, and there's the conversation where she tells Egwene, "You don't need to call me. You shouldn't have to call me Wisdom anymore." There's a little bit of that
Oh,
conversation.
yeah. That can take place after Rand's. So it could be like the Nynaeve Rand's meeting with the Amyrlin, and then Nynaeve and Egwene. Because I think that's tonally fits better.
There's that short conversation, and then there's a knock on the door, and there's like, that young man of yours is yelling for you, Egwene. That's what's happening. I forgot about that. And it's Rand just trying to say goodbye to Egwene, and because she comes out, confronts him, starts to walk off with him to talk, and scold him is what she says she's going to do, because propriety's sake, for how the women's wing works.
Rand does not, throughout the entire series, ever respect anybody's culture. Ever.
Nope. Yeah, I forgot about that. There's that. He says goodbye. And all that.
This part is like totally like blanking on me right now.
I literally just listened to it. That's the worst part.
It's clearly not that interesting. Well, this might be like the second or the third time Robert Jordan uses the title Leave Takings.
Oh yeah, something like that. That doesn't help. Oh.
But they get some sort of goodbye meeting. Honestly, I think at this point they should stop even pretending like Rand and Egwene are romantically interested in each other. But that's my take. I just don't need that to persist as long as it does in the books.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the book real quick.
Yeah, I figured. Mine is out of reach. I'm not gonna get up and get it. Because I think that's it, and then they split up. The ladies go to Tar Valon.
Yeah, there's the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
After Rand leaves, there's a little bit of conversation after Rand leaves between Moiraine and Barron and the Armelin, pretty much saying like, it has to happen, even though it's going to cause the world to burn. There's the Nynaeve Lan thing. Oh yeah, she punches a wall after he walks away or something like that.
Relatable.
A lot of inner monologue stuff with her.
My D&D character just broke a finger from punching a wall, so you know, I get it.
There's the Egwene Nynaeve conversation, which is really nice, I think, and them talking about their futures a little bit. Oh, skip something. Oh yeah, and she goes down to confront Rand. They have their heartfelt goodbye. She's like, you take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And all that. She talks about how he talks about how the Amerlin already knew and kind of, you know, has his thing. And then it just jumps to Rand in the courtyard.
Right.
So all this stuff's already packed.
Yeah, so that's you have Rand and Egwene's goodbye, and then they split up in the courtyard. I mean, I would do the men leave first, right, before the Amerlin's procession leaves.
The Amerlin's coming up to wish them good luck, pretty much. And she gets shot by an arrow.
Oh yeah, there's that. But isn't it implied that Perrin and Mat also have meetings with the Amerlin? Maybe not Mat, but Perrin also has a meeting with the Amerlin.
Yes.
So maybe we should see that.
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know because we don't know what's said in that meeting or if there's anything good or interesting or useful about that meeting. But insofar as I would prefer the story to be split more evenly and not just be solely Rand. I would like to see that meeting, potentially. I mean, at this point, we already know Rand's the Dragon Reborn. Like, it's not like there's a secret.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it might be interesting to see why are the Aes Sedai still interested in him, even though he's not, and they know he's not.
Yeah, but what's said in that meeting, and I think they talked to Mat in the infirmary rather than him coming up for a meeting, is pretty much of, hey, the horn and the dagger were stolen. Mat's going because he's the only one who can handle the dagger. Perrin, do you want to go with your friend? That's all the meeting seems like.
Yeah.
From what is implied, and it doesn't seem like, it's not like with Rand's meeting where there's big revelations that happen. It's literally like, I want to meet you because you're a Saviran, and hey, your friend's going off to do this thing.
That's true.
That's why I don't think it's important.
Yeah, I guess
Especially
it
in a
just
very
depends. If I would like to see it if they do something interesting with it, I guess is the best way to put it.
yeah.
But whether or not they could or would say anything interesting with it is the question.
And honestly, because at this point it's a lot of writing on both ends of the spectrum for both. Because yes, there's the arrow that's shot, big fiasco, and the Armlin's like, I don't care, we're leaving anyways.
Right.
Goodbye, Ingtar. You guys can't stick around. You guys got to go.
Right. So then you have them set out. See, I don't know. I envisioned this episode ending with them setting out, was my thought. But it doesn't feel like we have enough. I know we've talked for almost an hour about it, but it feels like we don't have an hour worth of TV show right now.
So what I'm thinking is we see the Armlin tells them, hey, go. We see Rand and Ingtar and all them ride out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Armelin turns after she finally gets Lord Agomar to relax and say, okay, fine, I don't want you to go, but go anyways. She kind of turns to her group and it's like, all right, we need to go too. And we watch them leave. And that would be the end of the episode.
That's what I
now
thought.
what I'm thinking.
I don't know if we have an hour of content in here. That's
why I'm gonna go with maybe they do some more significant flashbacks here.
That's true. They could do some more flashback in there either now or at some point. Because if they go with, because Moraine split, she doesn't follow them. So they could maybe
with them.
Not, well, I don't know when she divides from them because she doesn't go with them to Tar Valon.
Yeah, so she splits off on the way to the boat sometime.
Yeah. So it could be they end with like,
that's what they could,
with Moraine and Swan saying goodbye, and then maybe have like another flashback at the end, or have a flashback and Moraine and Swan say goodbye, and that would be the end of the episode. One, because of the title, and two, because of my own selfish desires. I want this to be a very Moraine Swan episode. So ending with them would be starting with them meeting each other after 20 years and ending with them saying goodbye again. Seems like a nice bracketing for this episode.
But she doesn't say goodbye to her. She just leaves.
She just eats.
Because that is in the books a big thing where
oh yeah, Swan's kind of pissed about it. She's like, she just disappeared.
Yeah. Which I think would work also, even with what you're saying. They could show, if you wanted to end the episode a little bit later, you can show obviously Moraine's with the procession as they're all riding out, and then like follow it a little bit and see Moraine kind of peel off into the sunset while everybody else keeps riding.
Yeah.
I only say into the sunset because it'd be like as night's starting to fall, she peels off to do her own thing.
Yeah, or it's like it's the women set up I keep saying women, the Aes Sedai set up camp for the night, and in the morning or in the middle of the night, she just leaves. Something like that. Before anybody wakes up. But I think that would be a really neat way to bracket it, is just end with Moraine and Swan leaving, separating again. And then,
So what you're saying is this whole episode is really between flashbacks to New Spring. The actual core of this episode is Swan's relationship and how they've become separated through the past 20 years with other stuff sprinkled in.
Yeah. Because if they even have it, like, you could parallel this really nicely with flashbacks of Swan and Moraine flashback New Spring, where Moraine's leaving to find the Dragon Reborn while Swan's stuck in the tower. And then,
you could definitely, I'm thinking, extend this episode out with a lot more New Spring information, a lot more of this stuff. And I'm not exactly sure where they would put it, but I think we should end with both parties leaving, just because at this point there's so much. You don't get to another good stopping point without a lot of traveling. I mean, they're not going to show all the traveling, but
I mean, yeah. Well, in the way, obviously, so we don't have the episode 7, episode 8 titles, and we're not entirely sure, but I kind of see one of them being more focused on the boys and the other one being more focused on the girls, is kind of the way I see it going. And then
I personally think episodes 7 and 8 are going to be focused on Rand's point of view, with maybe a couple of snippets of Egwene showing up.
yeah, I
Like
guess, well,
Egwene
because
stuff.
yeah, I mean, we don't really get that much of them in the tower, I guess, in retrospect.
We're not going to get any of the tower first thing.
Oh, see, I disagree, but that'll be when we get. I mean, it's hard to know. We have so little information about 7 and 8.
Okay.
But
so I know you mentioned it, and I'm starting to lean towards it, and I'm in my head. I have an ending point for season 1.
I have an ending point, an exact ending point for Egwene's story in season 1. I have a few different options for ending points for Rand's story.
So I wanted to get to the flicker scene for Rand.
Yeah, so that's one of the options. So for Egwene, I think it's going to end with Egwene either following Leandrin into the ways and we don't get to see her destination, or she gets out of the ways and something crazy. I don't think we're going to see the Shan Chan at all. I don't think we'll see them at all. But we get to them arriving and chaos breaks out with Egwene's story. I think we're going to get her not her entire arc, because there's stuff that happens when she gets there. For Rand, I could see them ending the flicker sequence, ending when they get to Kyrian and the Waygate is blocked, or ending when Rand gets sucked into the portal world. One of the mirror world. One of those 3 options, depending on how they balance stuff out, how much of, if they incorporate more flashbacks, if they incorporate more, more of the tower than we got in the book. So, like, there's a few different factors there.
This is my reason for not introducing the tower. Okay, we know there's a magic system.
Right.
When the tower gets introduced, I want like an episode that is all 7 years of the Harry Potter schooling in one episode of
Wheel so that's of Time what I was thinking, was that we focus on one episode is Egwene's time in the tower, and another episode would be Rand's story, and depending on how they pace things out, it could end with him in the Porter world. Like, Perrin wakes up, where's Rand at, Obviously, you would have it mix a little bit, because, like, just doing one story than the other is kind of dumb, but
putting the tower in is just like, we're coming to the end of season 1. Why introduce the tower at this point? Because I think it's such an integral thing, because this is the only time we get tower information.
Well,
also,
if you have
their time in the
you see, I feel like the way you're going, then it would make me lean towards the theories that Elaine and Min aren't in the first season. Because, like, I think that's the only reason you introduce Elaine and Min early on, is if you bring them back later in this season. But if you're not going to have the tower in the first season, then don't introduce them at all.
I mean, it's possible. Except then, do you cut out Rand meeting Galida?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
so,
I think it's really useful if you introduce all these characters later to reintroduce them in the tower in the first season. I
could see ending with her getting to the tower and meeting Elaine and Min.
Interesting. So you would have, like, season 1 end with Flicker, and then season 2, like, the first episode, or even maybe 2, but probably the first episode would just be Egwene in the tower. You would leave everybody on what the heck happened to Rand?
Exactly. That's the point.
It'd be interesting. I'm not totally opposed. I guess we'll just have to wait till we have a little more information.
The reason is, and this is the only spoiler I'm going to say that might be outside of season 1, we know that at that flicker scene, 3 months of time pass.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm saying it's a great season ender, and then we pick up with Egwene getting to the tower in the order of events. We would still be with it. Her getting to the tower and him disappearing happen around the same time.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Then
exactly. No, because Egwene's in Shan or in Fall, excuse me, in Falma for a while.
No, that's not. She's only there for like a month.
Right, and then yeah, and that's of the 3 months, and then she's in. I guess maybe it might be around the same. I don't know.
We get a huge time skip from Egwene shows up to the tower, meets Elaine and Min, Rand disappears, and then we get Leandrin showing up to, well, we get the acceptance test and a couple other things that happen when they first get there. We don't get anything that happens for like 2 months of them training, because when we come in and Leandrin's coming to get them, they're complaining about how their days have been going.
Right.
And they've advanced because now they can make colored balls of light, and they couldn't before. When they first met, all they can do was a small flame.
Right, I know.
There's a
I'm
lot
just, I'm not arguing that. It's just, I could see your point. I just don't like that we just like lose half of the story for 2 episodes.
But the other half of the story in the timeline is Egwene, when they get to the ship, she talks about, and this happens when Rand gets transported to the portal world for timeline lining up. Egwene saying Rand's in trouble and trying to find Moiraine, but Moiraine left. We find out Moiraine left, Leandrin left, and Varen left. Which I think should be kept in as part of it, because that also explains later why Varen's showing up
Right.
to the boys group.
So you would say in episode 7 we would have like the stuff on the boat that happened with Egwene and Nynaeve, but that would be it.
I would say we would get a little bit of the different Aes Sedai coming to train her at night, and then them getting to the boat and her explaining her dream.
And then maybe in episode 8 we get them getting to the tower, but don't actually get anything in the tower. Maybe just her meeting like Min and Elaine and them.
And Gawain and Galad and all that stuff.
Okay, maybe. I feel like we need a lot more information to really make this stuff, because you and I are on very different ideas here, so that's interesting.
I mean, I like things to be as chronological as possible.
Yeah, well, I want to double check on the chronological thing there, because Rand is traveling for a long time. Like, okay. There's a lot of time that takes place between them leaving Faldara and them getting to Cairhien, and the boat isn't going to take as much time as that. I have a website that I'll check later that has all the timeline stuff, but that's not important for right now.
Oh, it's my phone. Okay. I know, because we're not talking about those episodes, but we don't have episode titles yet.
It's fine. We'll get to it eventually. We should wrap up anyway.
I know. But we can argue this later. Maybe we can have an episode where we just argue about how we think the series is going to end.
Yeah, if we don't get more information on episode 7 and 8, then maybe that is the way to do it.
And I will bring you facts for the timeline, because, I know things and I don't need the internet to tell me.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
All right.
Thank you for listening or watching this episode of Another Turning.
You can follow us on Twitter or Instagram at PodAnother. Feel free to message us there, join our Discord to continue the conversation, or comment below if you have any thoughts.
Yep. Sounds good. My mind just blanked on if we have anything else.
I think that's it. We'll see you the next time the wheel turns.